So let's look at how you can go ahead and earn some interest, all right? Now, there's a couple different ways that we can earn interest, right? Because I kept on saying 8%, 8%, 8%. Well, what do you mean 8%? How do you get this 8%? Because the only thing I know is taking money, saving it, put it under my bed, right? So you can take your money. If you have a checking account or a savings account, you can put it at a bank. And the bank is very not risky. But you're probably only going to earn between somewhere around 0 to 2%. I mean, it all really depends on the bank and depends on how much money you have to save as well. But the reason why you're getting such a low return is because the bank is relatively safe. Like, we're at least in a good economy where we're not really scared that we can't go to the bank tomorrow and the bank's not going to be able to give us our money back, right? However, that's not like it's never happened before. Like, if we go through a banking crisis, right? I mean, that is a possibility. So there is a little bit of risk, and other countries have gone through that, very recently. And even through our history, we have gone through that. So the bank does have risk, but it's very minimal risk. So that's why your return on that is going to be rather low, all right? But if you just need somewhere to put some money, the bank is great. But if you're going to try to earn money, like building compound interest, the bank is a horrible way to do it. The next way is going to be kind of like bonds and commodities. And again, guys, these percentages are just rough estimates. I mean, obviously, these are on the average, long term. And again, they're really just numbers that I'm picking out of my head. It's not like I've done a lot of research for this, but it's a good general idea because I do try to stay up to date with a lot of information. But it's there to give you at least an idea. So bonds and commodities, so basically, like government bonds, treasury bonds, municipal bonds, they basically need to raise money, and they will say, we'll give you this return on your investment if you give us this money now and so forth. Or you can like commodities, like buying grain or gold, or like investing that and seeing where those prices go. Now, the nice thing about the bonds is it's pretty stable. Again, like you're basically saying, as long as those governments don't shut down, right? Or the commodity no longer is traded or exists, then my money's going to be rather safe, or at least as far as the commodities have to continue to grow as in value. But so my parents bought bonds for me when I was a child, and it was a 20-year maturity bond or 30 years or something. So I had to wait till I was 20, 30 years old, and then they're like, oh, here's these bonds your parents got 4% on. It was oh, cool. They spent $200 and I got whatever 4% was for, over 20, 30 years. So those are pretty nice. And again, they're pretty stable. But again, if we're trying to project our high-end growth, we're not really going to be doing much, with keeping on those bonds and, commodity, market. Or at least not even so much talking about those, but just looking at something that's giving us a return on investment of 1 to 4%. Because really, any one of these could really get that low of a percentage, right? So I'm just giving you guys these ranges, just an idea. The next one is going to be like stocks or securities. And that is just kind of a historical average of our rate of return in the stock market, as well as the 8%. And obviously, guys, we could get a little bit higher, right? I mean, recently, right now, we've been dealing with a 12%, rough return on the stock market. But we all know that we could go through another crisis and then boom, it could be negative, right? But when we look at the average return of the stock market, we usually look year to year to kind of see what has gone on. And the historical average is right around that 6 to 8%, time frame. And the other thing to deal with that is you could buy individual stocks, right? You could buy stock in just Apple and put all your money in Apple and say, we are hoping that Apple is going to go to the moon and keep on growing, right? And sometimes stocks grow really fast for a company, but then also you could say, I'm going to put all my money in Toys R Us. And then, boom, there is no Toys R Us, right? And then you could lose all your money. So the more risk you put, the obviously higher return or risk of losing your money is there. In the same respect, you can also buy ETFs or index funds or mutual funds and funds that have bonds in them. So they're a little bit more secure for you because they spread out the wealth. Rather than buying in one company, you're buying in hundreds or even thousands of companies in small amounts. So you can minimize your risk. But usually when you minimize your risk, guys, you lower your percentage, right? The more risk usually you take, the higher your percentage. So this is just a rough, I mean, really, guys, stocks can go into the negatives and they can go up to the 20s and percents, right? But just to give you an idea. But the important thing here is, or actually even for those, But these are kind of like things you own. So the next one is like rentals, all right? So a way you could also earn interest is by renting something out, right? The kind of classic example is don't buy a bike, buy 2 bikes. Buy 1 bike for yourself and buy another bike to rent out. Rent it out to somebody, earn that money, and then keep on reinvesting that money, right? You guys go to the beach, you see people are renting stuff at the beach all the time. They're making money off those rentals, right? They put investment into whatever they're renting, and then they continue to get income from that, right? You think about houses. People buy houses all the time. What do? They rent them out. Why? Because they're making money on that rent. And year after year, they keep on getting more and more of that money, and that's producing their rate of return, right? You can, anything that you can rent out to people goes. You can even think about like loans, right? I mean, a loan is really a rent saying, hey, you don't have any money, you're going somewhere. I have $1,000, let me give you $1,000, and hey, I'll charge you 8%. So when you pay back your loan, you give me 8%. I'm not telling you guys that's what you need to do, but that's an idea of a rental, right? I mean, you're basically renting out their money, and then they're giving it back to you for a rate of return, okay? The next sale is like resale. So again, these are kind of more like entrepreneur, like getting a business kind of thing, but resale is like you buy something cheap, and then you resell it. Or you buy something, fix it up, and then resell it. So you go through the classic example, buying something at a garage sale, putting it back online or on eBay and like reselling it, right? Or buying something in bulk and then individually, selling them, right? I mean, each and every time, if you're making that, little bit return on each of those items, then you're making that, interest in kind of income. In the same respect, people like to buy things and fix them up, like computers or electronics. Buy it, fix it up, or clothes. They buy clothes, add a little bit of twist to them, and then resell the clothes. They buy a car, fix up the car, resell it. They buy a house, fix up the house, resell it, right? So there's all those different like business ideas that you can gain interest on. Okay, someone have a question? You have a question? Oh, okay. Yeah, flipping houses. That's resale, right? And you're earning interest. And again, you got to understand though, there's risk with those, right? I mean, if there's risk with like renting something out. Like what if you have a little rental business and then somebody with more money comes in and like wipes out your whole rental business? Like, well, then what do you do with all your inventory, right? You could try to like sell it out or maybe just like the demand for whatever you're renting is no longer there, right? So you could lose that kind of investment. Or like resale, the same thing, like the real estate market. People are buying houses, flipping them. Well, then what happens when like the market dies? And then nobody wants to buy a house. Well, you kind of have all these houses that you invested in, and you can't sell them for the return that you needed, right? And some people take a loss, right? So there's ups and there's downs, but I'm looking at the like overall average because the farther you get here with the less risk, like the lower your peaks and valleys are. But the more you get over it here to like the more kind of peaks and valleys that you're going to kind of occur. So it's the more risk. It's like the roller coaster effect. If you want the big gains, you got to understand that there's going to be those dips and like how to handle them. And then the last two of those is one that I really want to talk about because this is where a lot of people look at is because they see this, like the infinity percent. Now, really infinities we all know is not a number, but I put infinity because like literally guys it's to the moon how much you can afford. We think back like in the years of the internet, people are like, oh, if you would have invested, $100 into Google in, 19 whatever, you'd be a multimillionaire by now. Well, it's like, yeah, wow, why did not everybody do that? Well, back in the day, there was thousands of internet companies, thousands of websites, right? Nobody knew who was gonna be the best website that everybody uses. Nobody knew. So if you were one of those people that were speculating, people were putting thousands and thousands of dollars into all these websites. And a lot of those websites just, what we call the dot-com bust, like they just went away. All that money that was invested in them or that was invested for them to grow, done, right? And then Google emerged. And obviously the people that bet on Google won. But there's tons of people, thousands, hundreds, millions, I don't know, that invested all these other websites that did nothing. The same thing is going on now with like cryptocurrency, right? People are like, oh, I'm going to invest in this coin. I'm going to invest in that coin, which is like, hey, great. Like I have like cryptocurrency as well. But it's like, I'm not investing in this one coin hoping that that's going to be the home run. I mean, that's just speculating. Like, because yes, if you're investing in all these, there's thousands of coins out there. So, I mean, are we, like, is all thousands of coins going to rise up like all the thousands of websites? No, there's probably going to be only a couple that are used, and who really knows what are going to be them? Like, maybe I'll hit a home run, maybe you will hit a home run, but who really knows? But the best thing you're doing is you're speculating. Like, that's like penny stocks or speculating in companies, right? You're putting money into a young company, hoping that that young company is going to be like the next thing, like the Uber, right? People could have invested in Uber a long time ago, and they didn't, right? Some people did, and they're making like multi-millionaires just because they invested in Uber when everybody thought that was a stupid idea, right? So you can make a great return on your investment. You can also strike out, okay? But everybody gets romantic about seeing the high percentage, so that's why they kind of shift to over here. And the same thing is like the gambling. What does everybody want to do? They want to do that dollar scratch off and win the multi-million-dollar, or do this, Powerball and win the multi-million dollars. Like, the rate of return is insane, correct? But we also know the odds of that is pretty much, why don't you just give me your money? Because the odds of you winning or making an actual rate of return, into the bottom bin, please, a rate of return by gambling or speculating is so very, very low. At least speculating, at least there's maybe some research that people will be doing, right? Obviously, there's people that do make a living in this category, but they have a very high tolerance for risk because they will hit some home runs and then they'll strike out, like sports betting, right? I mean, that's not really like the lottery. They spend a lot of time understanding what's going on, the trends and all that kind of stuff. People make money, but people also get into that arena not knowing what they're doing and lose a lot of money. So it's really not a great rate of return for the majority of people that are just hoping to strike rich. And that's what most people are. They're just hoping to strike rich. But again, guys, if we learned everything, it's usually not on the extremes is where the wealth is. Like, yes, you can win the $1 million. Yes, you can invest in the next cryptocurrency and be rich. Same thing. Yes, by not trusting the stock market and saying the world is going to end, I'm just going to put my money in the bank, that's not going to do much for you either, right? But by maybe investing something into maybe the stocks or the bonds, or commodity market, or maybe looking into something that you can rent or resell, or having a company or doing something like that, that's where you're going to look into. And again, notice my numbers were 8%, right? I mean, you can compound everything a little bit higher if you have a better percentage, or even a little bit lower. But you want to, you guys could see there was the power of compound interest at that 8% was pretty good, right? So that is just some ideas. Again, guys, it's just some rough numbers up there for you, but I really just want to kind of spark your curiosity, and that's really the reason what I've wanted to go through for this video.